Mr. Speaker, I come to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, every week to ask sensible questions, and I expect sensible answers. But all I get is glazed expressions and waffle from the opposite benches.
Keir Starmer loves to raise his voice. But what happens when someone finally answers back and strikes where it truly hurts? Whenever anyone dares to challenge him, Starmer and his Labour allies erupt in noise, reacting like students caught cheating. This time, though, Starmer picked a fight with the wrong opponent. Lee Anderson from Reform UK did not simply raise a routine question. He confronted Starmer head-on in Parliament and left him completely speechless. It was direct, sharp, and unrelenting. Anderson's words landed so hard that Starmer flushed with anger, yet still failed to respond. He attempted to push back, but the damage had already been done. So what exactly did Anderson say that shook Starmer to his core? In this video, we break down the full story. It began during one of the most uncomfortable moments at Prime Minister's questions. Lee Anderson stood and delivered a question so straightforward, yet so cutting, that it tore through Starmer's entire green agenda within seconds. Yes, a single question was enough to rattle Starmer's environmental strategy and the billions of pounds invested in it.
Mr. Speaker, I come to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, every week to ask sensible questions, and I expect sensible answers. But all I get is glazed expressions and waffle from the opposite benches. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Prime Minister a very simple question on behalf of all the net zero sceptics. If we became net zero tomorrow, by how much would it reduce the Earth's temperature by? Simple question.
Keir Starmer, who presents himself as the leader of a government driven by economic strength and scientific expertise, simply could not provide an answer. It was not because he failed to understand the question. It was because he knew the truthful response would tear apart the carefully constructed illusion surrounding his net zero vision. Instead of responding with facts, figures, or clear reasoning, he chose to deflect. He turned to personal attacks on Lee Anderson. He dragged Nigel Farage into the exchange. He even resorted to a childish swipe, claiming Farage wants to be Prime Minister, but cannot even lead a party small enough to fit in the back of a taxi.
Mr. Speaker, net zero is of course not easy, but it's a huge opportunity to boost our growth, our jobs and our economy. And so he knows my views on that. But you know, he complains that I've better ideas if they stop fawning over Putin. And I understand the member for Clacton wants to be Prime Minister. He can't even lead a party that fits in the back of a...
It was one of the most pathetic, embarrassing, and intellectually insulting replies imaginable. That was not an answer. It was not leadership. It was political cowardice disguised as clever banter. A response without science, without numbers, without substance, just a smirk and a few lazy lines crafted by advisors who seem to believe sarcasm can distract from reality, while the public struggles to heat their homes and disabled citizens face cuts to their welfare support.
Most members of this House will be aware that the welfare system can be a nightmare to navigate and does indeed need reform. But could we have less of this rhetoric about his £5 billion package of disability benefit so-called reform being moral? There is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. This is not about morality. This is about the Treasury's wish to balance the country's books on the back of the most vulnerable and poor people.
Let's be honest. If a Prime Minister cannot explain how much a flagship environmental policy will actually reduce the planet's temperature, then either the policy is misleading or the Prime Minister is. Either way, someone is paying the price, and it is not the climate. The reality is that the UK produces roughly 1% of global emissions. Even if the country became completely carbon neutral tomorrow, switching off every car and every light, shutting down every factory, and dragging modern life back to the Stone Age. The projected effect on global temperature would be less than 0.01 degrees Celsius by the year 2100.
Let's face it, I mean, I had this argument with somebody out in Baku earlier in the week. You know, we've reduced our emissions by between 42 and 50% over the last 10 to 20 years, and it hasn't made any difference at all to the climate, and it hasn't made any difference at all to the carbon emissions of the world. In fact, in every other place, it's going up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Britain is going to look quite ridiculous if our economy goes on shrinking in years to come. The Americans have been growing really quite quickly because despite Mr. Biden's best attempts, the American economy is much stronger than ours and has kept growing. And I think we can probably expect that Mr. Trump will accelerate that growth. So, they are all, what isn't it? Mississippi now is the poorest state in the US is now wealthier
Yes.
than anywhere in the UK. I mean,
Right.
it's just, this is madness how far we're dropping behind. And as you say, it's making no difference to the climate at all.
That is the hard reality Keir Starmer refused to say out loud, because admitting it would unravel the entire narrative. £11 billion spent, industries weakened, welfare support reduced, and the climate barely registers a change.
So, Charlotte, you've seen the pathetic response from Sir Keir Starmer. He's not here to defend himself, but it wasn't a response at all. Either he couldn't answer the question or he knew the answer and was too embarrassed to give the answer. Is net zero killing us?
I think it's the second one. I think he's too embarrassed to admit that net zero isn't working. I can't believe he's still peddling this idea that it's a boost to the economy, even as evidence points in the exact opposite direction. We're seeing job losses in factories because factories are too expensive to run. It's really affecting the working people, while people in Westminster are sneering. The Ed Miliband sneering, virtue signalling.
Yeah, sneering, yeah.
Net zero zealots. But what it's actually doing is affecting people with jobs in factories, which is completely the opposite end of the scale. I just don't think they take into account these people. And I think the fact that Kemi Badenoch this week sort of wrote it off, it says all we need to say, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And while Labour channels billions into this green vision, it is cutting winter fuel payments, trimming disability benefits, and tightening personal independence payments. The very people who rely on that support to get through the coldest months are being asked to bear the cost, while offshore wind projects are subsidized despite failing to deliver when the wind falls still. Pensioners are pushed aside for policies that promise more than they produce. That is not progress. It is hardship wrapped in a green ribbon.
Net zero by 2050 is impossible. I don't say that with pleasure. I want a better future and a better environment for our children, but we have to get real. Anyone who has done any serious analysis knows it cannot be achieved without a significant drop in our living standards, or worse, by bankrupting us. Responsible leaders don't indulge in fictions which are going to make families poorer or mortgage their children's future. Without the rest of the world doing the same, we are making our country less safe, less secure, and less resilient. That's why, as part of our policy renewal, we are going to do something that Labour failed to do in 14 years of opposition. We are going to deal with reality.
It's a hoax, isn't it? Net zero. If the enemy is carbon, then surely the last thing you would do is chop down a load of trees in a place that is considered the lungs of the planet to build a 4-lane motorway for a summit about saving the planet.
Before we go any further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If you are, please like and share it, and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive coverage of the groundbreaking changes unfolding on Offscript. Now let's continue. At this point, it increasingly appears that the entire project is little more than a political illusion, with Keir Starmer and the Labour Party repeatedly making pledges designed to satisfy climate activists. In reality, they understand how unrealistic these targets are, yet they have failed to present any practical, workable plan to achieve them.
Nigel Farage.
Well, it depends what those climate policies are. And at the moment, we're pursuing completely unrealistic climate policies. I mean, the Labour pledge to decarbonise the grid by 2030 will not happen, just as the Conservative pledge to decarbonise the grid by 2035 will not happen. Not only is it impossible, it's actually unaffordable. So we have to be grown up and sensible. If we get new technologies that give us cheaper energy or better ways of manufacturing things, that's great. But what we're doing in this country is we're sacrificing economic growth. We've been massacring British manufacturing. And we say to ourselves, isn't it marvellous? We've reduced carbon emissions more than any other Western country, but we haven't. All we've done is to export carbon emissions when our steel works go to India, or our car manufacture moves to China, or to Turkey, or wherever it is. And we're living in a complete fool's paradise.
We're tying ourselves in knots over net zero. Oh my God, isn't it awful? Look at what we're doing to the world. Well, look at this tweet from Narendra Modi. He's the PM of India, fighting for re-election, boasting that India this year will produce 1 billion tons of coal. That's what they're going to mine this year. And then look at the all-time graph for CO2 emissions, and you'll see even the Industrial Revolution was barely a blip compared to what is going on now. Why should we put money on electricity bills? Why should we be importing oil, gas, many other things, when frankly, we are irrelevant? If climate change is a problem, I'll tell you what, we're not even a part of it. Look at the numbers.
Meanwhile, when a serious question is raised about the future of energy policy, Keir Starmer barely treats it with respect. Instead of engaging with the substance, he accuses critics of echoing Russian talking points. This is the level of debate we have been reduced to. If you question Labour's net zero agenda, you are branded a supporter of Vladimir Putin. If you ask about soaring energy prices, you are dismissed as anti-science. It is childish, manipulative, and deeply dangerous. While Starmer jokes about taxis and invents imaginary alliances between Reform UK and Moscow, British families are being priced out of heat and light. Steel plants are closing. Workers are losing their livelihoods. And the Prime Minister cannot answer the most basic question about his own energy strategy. This is not leadership. It is not science. It is not a serious plan. It is ideology wrapped in polished sound bites. Starmer offers no clear data, no detailed roadmap, and no straight answers, only insults, hollow slogans, and a green crusade that critics argue is leaving Britain colder, poorer, and more frustrated by the day. But consider what Starmer avoids discussing. Labour's net zero plan, driven by Ed Miliband, carries an estimated annual cost of £28 billion and rising. Unlike other pressing priorities, such as winter fuel support for pensioners, assistance for disabled citizens, or relief for struggling families, the green agenda is treated as untouchable. Savings are demanded everywhere else to sustain it. Under Labour, winter fuel payments face reductions. Disability benefits, such as personal independence payment, are being frozen or tightened, and broader welfare cuts amount to more than £6 billion. All of this unfolds while vast sums are directed toward abstract green investments that have yet to demonstrate measurable impact. Adding to the frustration, Starmer's own team has acknowledged expectations of continued tariffs and inflation, factors likely to strain the economy even further. So while Labour invests heavily in wind projects and carbon schemes, ordinary Britons shoulder the burden through higher bills, reduced support, and a more fragile economic outlook.
Prime Minister, the Bank of England's just cut interest rates, but it's also halved growth for 2025 forecast and raised the inflation forecast and said employers' national insurance hike will raise prices and hit jobs more than expected. It's a poor verdict on your budget and bad news for your growth plan. You must be really disappointed.
Well, what I think is significant today is that the interest rates have come down. That's the third cut in interest rates since July. That is really important because that means more money in people's pockets. Of course, wages are going up higher than inflation. Again, more money in people's pockets. But we're never going to turn around the economy in just 6 or 7 months. It was always going to take time. There's more to do. And that's why the announcement we're making today about nuclear, which is moving this on significantly to small modular reactors, getting again to the front of the queue in the world on that, making sure that can be done elsewhere across the country. So AI, data centres and nuclear can come together. This is hugely important. That means lots of investment into our country, which is then measured in jobs. So when it comes to growth,
They said that your NI is going to cut jobs. They said the NI...
Keir Starmer's pledge to fully decarbonise the UK electricity grid by 2030 is not merely ambitious. It is, critics argue, detached from reality. Even Gary Smith, leader of Labour's allied union GMB, has acknowledged how unrealistic that timeline appears. The challenge is straightforward. The grid lacks the necessary infrastructure. There are not enough undersea cables to reliably transmit offshore wind power. There is no proven large-scale energy storage system in place. In fact, the UK currently has storage capacity covering roughly 1 hour of national electricity demand. At the same time, a recent government auction for offshore wind projects collapsed after no company submitted a bid. Investors are hesitant. The market remains unstable. Yet Labour continues to hold tightly to the 2030 target, presenting it as non-negotiable. And when pressed for detailed answers, clear explanations rarely follow. Lee Anderson captured the frustration when he argued that whenever Labour lacks an answer, it raises its voice instead. According to critics, this is not a party that welcomes debate, it sidesteps it. It does not robustly defend its policies. It redirects the conversation and questions the motives of those asking.
This useless Labour government are doing the impossible. They're actually making things worse. They really are. Look who we've got running the country at the moment. Free Gear Keir. Or Never Hear Keir. We've got Rachel from Accounts. We know her, don't we? Angela Rayner, the no-brainer. You got Mad Miliband, that net zero fanatic. And let's not forget our very own mastermind, David Lammy. He's a proper chop.
Keir Starmer had the opportunity to clearly lay out his so-called grand plan. He could have explained to the British public how these policies would directly benefit them and ease their concerns. Instead, he chose to mock Nigel Farage, claiming he is trying to lead a party small enough to fit in the back of a taxi.
That's a little bit harsh. I have to say, Lee Anderson is superb at those sort of questions. In
simple, straightforward.
Very, very simple, just very straightforward questions. You know, what will this actually achieve? I think net zero, I mean, it's interesting. Kemi Badenoch now rowing back on that. Again, it's the Tories that put all that stuff into legislation. Theresa May, frankly.
She's doubled down on it today as well, Theresa May.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, Theresa May has so much to answer for on so many different issues. But in terms of the long-term damaging legacy to this country, net zero is the one that is...
In doing this, Keir Starmer revealed exactly what kind of leader he is: shallow, evasive, and intellectually hollow. What do you think? Why is Starmer prioritizing policies with no immediate impact over measures that could help millions of people right now? Isn't it clear that supporting pensioners and providing welfare benefits for the disabled should come before abstract environmental goals? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Can Starmer truly lead Britain? And should he be allowed to? If you want to see more videos like this one, please like and share the video. And subscribe for more updates on Off Script and the events shaping the country.